I never thought a few coins could feel like the weight of the world, Emily whispered to herself, staring at the crumpled pennies in her palm as she stepped into the cold, fluorescent-lit convenience store. The door chimed softly behind her, blending with the distant hum of traffic outside, and she clutched her baby against her chest, feeling the tiny warmth and fragility of her daughter, Lily. Every aisle seemed to stretch longer than the last, each shelf a reminder of the impossibility of her task. Just one can of formula, enough to tide her daughter through the night. Her jacket hung loosely on her shoulders, a hand-me-down from her mother, frayed at the cuffs and carrying the faint scent of lavender soap from home. Emily's stomach knotted as she placed the formula on the counter, counting each coin carefully, the copper and silver clinking against each other like a fragile symphony of desperation. Behind her, the automatic doors whooshed again and she felt a gaze, cold, assessing, almost dismissive. Richard Lawson, the CEO who had just walked in, towered over the counter with a sharp suit and sharper eyes, the kind that could see a life reduced to numbers and decisions, and he looked at her as if she were a fleeting curiosity rather than a human being. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, his tone a mixture of surprise and a subtle judgment, and Emily froze for a heartbeat, the coins in her hand suddenly heavier than the air around them. She could feel the small crowd of shoppers shifting, glances darting between the frazzled young mother and the impeccable businessman, and her face flushed with the quiet shame she had learned to carry alone. But then she looked down at Lily, her tiny hands curling around her finger, and something inside her steadied. Emily placed the last penny with deliberate care, her fingers trembling yet resolute, and smiled faintly, a soft, brave curve of defiance against a world that seemed determined to overlook her. Outside, the winter sunlight caught the edges of her hair, painting it with a halo of resilience, while inside, the harsh store lights cast long shadows that mirrored the contrast of their worlds, one built on wealth, the other on sheer survival and determination. The beep of the register sounded, but it was more than a transaction. It was a declaration, a quiet testament to her strength, to the love that kept her moving forward no matter how small her means. Emily lifted Lily, cradling her close, feeling the rhythm of her heartbeat against her own, and for a fleeting moment, the power of her presence, fragile, unassuming, yet undeniable, filled the space between them, bridging the silent gap of misunderstanding, judgment, and unspoken respect. The fluorescent lights above hummed quietly as Emily stepped aside, the weight of her baby balanced against her chest and the small bag of formula in her hand. She could hear the faint rustle of other shoppers browsing, but the world had narrowed to the space between her and the register, and the sharp scent of disinfectant mixed with the faint aroma of baked bread from the deli corner. Richard Lawson had not moved yet, his gaze lingering on her with a complexity she could not decipher. His expensive leather shoes clicked softly against the tiled floor as he finally approached, the air between them heavy with unspoken assumptions and questions. "I do not understand why you did not seek help earlier," he said, his voice calm but tinged with curiosity. Emily looked up at him, her blue eyes steady, reflecting both weariness and quiet defiance. "I wanted to do this myself," she replied softly, her voice carrying the weight of countless sleepless nights, of balancing work shifts and studies while caring for a child who relied entirely on her. Richard nodded slowly, as if processing information that did not align with the neat, predictable life he was used to. The cashier scanned the formula, the beep sounding louder than it should in the stillness of the moment, each note echoing like a declaration of persistence. Emily handed over the coins one by one, the copper and silver a fragile testament to her determination. Around them, life continued in fragmented pieces, shoppers exchanging pleasantries, children tugging at their parents, the soft hum of refrigeration units. But the small scene between mother and CEO seemed suspended in time, like a painting of resilience and silent courage. Richard studied her closely, noticing the faint lines of stress etched beneath her eyes, the smudge of baby formula on her jacket, the way she held Lily with a careful, protective strength. He realized that she had been managing far more than he could have anticipated, juggling multiple responsibilities, yet carrying herself with a dignity that transcended circumstance. Emily moved toward the exit, her steps measured, the small bag in one hand and Lily in the other. Richard fell into step beside her, his stride longer and more assured, trying to bridge the physical and social distance that separated them. "You have incredible strength," he said quietly, almost to himself, yet loud enough for Emily to hear. She glanced at him briefly, surprised by the genuine note in his voice, a rare acknowledgement that pierced the invisible walls around her efforts. Outside, the winter sun gleamed off the asphalt, reflecting against car windows and the shiny surfaces of storefronts. Emily breathed in the crisp air, feeling its cool touch against her cheeks, grounding her after the tense, electric stillness inside. Richard matched her pace, his presence a mixture of intrigue and admiration. He could not ignore the reality that this young mother, with nothing but determination and love, was accomplishing feats that many with far more resources could not. The wind tugged gently at Emily's hair, yet she did not falter, her focus unwavering on her child and the path ahead. Richard watched the interaction between Emily and the world around her, noting how she navigated challenges with a subtle grace, how she met every obstacle with a quiet, persistent resolve. He was confronted with a truth he had not expected, that life's most profound strengths often went unnoticed, hidden behind ordinary appearances and everyday struggles. Emily smiled faintly down at Lily, who gurgled softly, her tiny hand brushing against Emily's finger, and in that moment, a bridge of mutual understanding seemed to form, a recognition of effort, resilience, and the invisible battles waged by those society often overlooked. Richard continued walking beside her, feeling a shift in perspective, realizing that witnessing courage firsthand was more impactful than any report or statistic could ever convey, and Emily moved with a subtle, unspoken assertion of self-worth that demanded acknowledgement, not pity. Emily pushed open the door to the small apartment she rented above the bakery, the hinges squeaking softly as the cold air from outside gave way to the warmth of her modest living space. Lily cooed against her chest, her tiny fingers curling around Emily's sweater, and a faint smile spread across Emily's lips despite the exhaustion that pressed on her shoulders. The apartment was simple, with a worn wooden table by the window and a single lamp casting a golden glow across the room, illuminating the few toys scattered on the floor. She carefully set the bag of formula on the counter, her eyes flicking to a notebook open on the table where she had been studying management techniques during stolen moments between shifts. Emily sank onto the chair, her back straight despite the fatigue, and felt the quiet satisfaction of having fulfilled her immediate responsibility. Outside, the city lights began to twinkle as evening approached, reflecting softly against the windows, and the sounds of distant traffic mingled with the faint aroma of baked bread drifting up from the bakery below. The door clicked behind her as Richard stepped inside, his presence unannounced yet gentle, a careful contrast to the abruptness of his previous questioning in the store. He carried no briefcase, no commanding aura, only a look of curiosity and subtle admiration as he regarded her space, taking in the careful organization of her tiny kitchen, the way Lily's crib was tucked neatly into a corner, and the stack of books that hinted at her ambitions. "You manage all of this on your own?" he asked quietly, his voice carrying a mixture of disbelief and respect. Emily nodded, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear, her expression composed yet soft. "I do not have a choice," she said simply, her tone steady. "Every decision I make is for her." Richard moved closer, his eyes scanning the room, noting the balance she maintained between survival and aspiration. He realized that Emily's life, though constrained by circumstance, was filled with deliberate actions that demonstrated remarkable foresight and dedication. She had carved order from chaos, a small sanctuary of learning and love within the walls of a modest apartment. Lily shifted in Emily's arms, and she hummed a soft tune, her voice low and steady, grounding both herself and her daughter in the quiet intimacy of the moment. Richard watched the way Emily navigated her world, noting the precision in her movements, the careful planning evident in every corner of the room, and a growing sense of admiration settled over him. He understood that the resilience Emily displayed was not fleeting courage but a consistent, disciplined effort that demanded recognition. Emily stood, moving with a graceful yet purposeful rhythm, and offered Lily a bottle of formula, her small hands steady, her actions deliberate. Richard observed the interaction, noting the seamless integration of care, patience, and intellect, each gesture reflecting her unwavering commitment. In that quiet space, removed from the bustle of the city below, the contrast between their lives became strikingly clear, yet it was not one of superiority or inferiority, but of potential and perseverance, of a life defined not by circumstance alone but by the choices made within it. Richard's expression softened as he absorbed the scene, realizing that Emily's quiet determination and resourcefulness had created a microcosm of resilience, a testament to the strength inherent in those who often go unseen and underestimated. Emily smiled at him briefly, a simple acknowledgement, and in that moment, the unspoken understanding between them spoke louder than words, a recognition of effort, courage, and the quiet triumph of persistence in the face of challenges. The room was bathed in the warm glow of the single lamp as Emily gently rocked Lily in her arms, the soft rhythm of the cradle echoing in the quiet apartment. She traced the outline of her daughter's tiny fingers with her own, marveling at how something so small could carry so much weight in her life. The day had been long, and every moment of effort felt magnified in the stillness of the evening. The window framed the city outside, lights flickering like distant stars, and the faint hum of traffic below reminded her of the relentless pace of the world beyond her walls. Richard stood near the doorway, hands loosely clasped, observing the subtle grace with which Emily managed her small domain. He could see the traces of exhaustion in her posture, the faint shadows beneath her eyes, yet she moved with a deliberate care that spoke of inner strength. "You make it look effortless," he said softly, almost to himself, yet Emily caught the words, lifting her gaze with a hint of surprise. "It is not effortless," she replied, her voice calm and steady, carrying the weight of countless decisions made under pressure. "It is necessity. It is love." Richard nodded slowly, absorbing the truth behind her words, realizing that what he had witnessed in the store was only a fragment of the life she navigated every day. Emily moved to the small table, lifting her notebook where she had been studying business strategies and child development, and spread it open with a methodical precision. Each page was filled with notes, plans, and sketches, a roadmap of her aspirations carefully intertwined with the practical needs of raising her daughter. Richard stepped closer, peering over her shoulder, and noticed the careful balance she maintained between survival and ambition, how each plan was grounded in reality yet infused with hope for a better future. Lily stirred in Emily's arms, her soft coos mingling with the quiet ambience of the apartment, and Emily hummed a lullaby, the melody simple yet filled with warmth and reassurance. Richard's eyes softened as he watched the intimate interaction, recognizing a depth of resilience and dedication that transcended mere circumstance. Emily carefully measured a small amount of formula into Lily's bottle, her movements precise and unhurried, each action reflecting the countless hours she had dedicated to mastering the smallest details of motherhood and responsibility. Richard realized that this was not just care for a child, but a disciplined orchestration of life under constraints, a testament to foresight, patience, and determination. He felt an unfamiliar admiration swelling within him, a quiet recognition that the strength he was witnessing was not loud or ostentatious, but steady, persistent, and deeply human. Emily placed Lily gently into the crib, smoothing the soft blanket around her and pausing to watch her settle, the small rise and fall of her daughter's chest a reminder of the precious life she safeguarded. She turned to Richard, her expression composed yet open, and for the first time he noticed the calm assurance in her eyes, a reflection of countless challenges met with grace and ingenuity. The apartment felt charged with a subtle energy, the intersection of two very different worlds yet bound by a shared acknowledgement of human effort and perseverance. Richard could sense that Emily's dedication was more than necessity. It was a quiet assertion of self-worth, a declaration that circumstances did not define her potential. He took a careful step closer, mindful of the unspoken boundaries, and said, "I underestimated what you have accomplished." Emily inclined her head slightly, a soft smile touching her lips, and in that gesture lay a recognition of understanding without need for embellishment or approval. Outside, the evening deepened, and the city lights shimmered against the darkening sky, the hum of life beyond her walls a distant soundtrack to the intimate world Emily had built. Every object, Every choice, every quiet moment in this apartment testified to a life navigated with intelligence, care, and resilience. Richard realized that witnessing this world had shifted his perspective, showing him the power of quiet determination, the profound impact of consistent effort, and the invisible victories that often went unnoticed. Emily's hands smoothed over the notebook once more, eyes flicking over her plans, and she spoke softly, almost to herself. "Every step matters, even the smallest ones." Richard nodded, understanding that the truth of her statement extended far beyond the confines of the apartment, into the larger world that often overlooked such unassuming courage. In that shared silence, an unspoken respect formed between them, a bridge of acknowledgement that would shape the moments to come, a subtle yet powerful shift in understanding and perception that illuminated the strength found in resilience, the dignity of effort, and the quiet heroism of everyday life. The quiet of the apartment settled around them like a soft blanket as Emily moved to the small kitchen counter to prepare a simple meal for herself. The faint aroma of reheated soup mingled with the lingering scent of laundry soap, a subtle reminder of the life she carefully maintained despite its limitations. Lily shifted in the crib, her soft coos punctuating the stillness, and Emily paused for a moment to watch her daughter, marveling at the resilience and innocence contained within such tiny hands. Richard leaned against the doorway, his gaze attentive yet unobtrusive, taking in the details of the modest space, the well-worn chairs, the stacks of books, the meticulous organization of daily necessities that spoke volumes about the discipline and care that defined Emily's life. "I cannot imagine balancing everything with such poise," he said, his voice measured, almost reverent, and Emily glanced up, offering a small, composed smile. "It is not always poise," she replied, her words quiet but deliberate. "Sometimes it is simply choosing to move forward, one task at a time." Richard nodded, understanding the depth of her statement, recognizing that her strength was not sudden or dramatic but built from countless moments of deliberate effort and perseverance. He watched as she plated a simple meal, arranging it with care as though the act itself demanded respect and attention. Emily moved with a quiet precision, her gestures fluid, almost meditative, as if each motion was an assertion of control over the unpredictable circumstances of her life. The evening light outside shifted subtly, casting long shadows across the floor, highlighting the contrast between the modest surroundings and the extraordinary fortitude that seemed to inhabit every corner of the apartment. Richard felt a growing sense of admiration, not merely for her ability to manage daily tasks, but for the resilience and ingenuity that allowed her to transform limitations into opportunities for growth and learning. Emily served herself at the small table, setting down the plate and taking a slow, deliberate breath as she began to eat, and Richard remained standing, observing her with a quiet respect, acknowledging the depth of character that emerged naturally from her actions rather than from any need for recognition. Lily stirred once more, and Emily hummed softly, a low, comforting melody that seemed to fill the apartment with warmth and reassurance. The simplicity of the scene contrasted sharply with the complexity of the life Emily navigated, and Richard could not help but feel a profound shift in perspective as he recognized the interplay of determination, intelligence, and compassion that shaped her existence. She rose from the table, placing her plate in the sink and returning to the crib to check on Lily, adjusting the blanket with careful attention to comfort and warmth, her movements fluid and confident, a reflection of the countless decisions she had made to provide a stable and nurturing environment. Richard noted the meticulous care and thoughtfulness in every action, understanding that what he had witnessed was not merely survival but a demonstration of deliberate choice, intelligence, and unwavering commitment. Emily sat beside the crib for a moment, gently stroking Lily's hair, her eyes reflecting a mix of fatigue and quiet satisfaction, and Richard sensed that this was the core of her strength, an ability to maintain dignity, poise, and love even when faced with relentless challenges. The soft hum of the city beyond the window served as a backdrop to their quiet interaction, emphasizing the resilience and determination that defined Emily's daily life. Richard spoke softly, almost to himself. "There is a remarkable strength here, one that does not seek notice but commands it nonetheless." And Emily looked up briefly, acknowledging the statement with a faint nod, a subtle but powerful connection forming between them, an understanding that went beyond words to recognize the courage, intelligence, and humanity that defined her every action. The soft glow of the evening light filtered through the thin curtains, casting long, gentle shadows across the apartment as Emily settled into the worn armchair with Lily nestled against her chest. The quiet hum of the city outside served as a distant reminder of the life beyond these walls, but inside, the space was filled with an intimate stillness, a sanctuary carved through careful planning and unwavering dedication. Emily's hands moved with practiced ease as she adjusted the blanket around Lily, smoothing it with tender precision, and then glanced at the open notebook on the table where she had been charting out a schedule that balanced work, study, and childcare. Each line of writing, each note, spoke to a life meticulously managed, a life that demanded constant vigilance and thoughtful decision-making. Richard Lawson remained standing near the doorway, his presence quiet but attentive, his eyes scanning the small apartment with an appreciation that had deepened over the evening. He noticed the small touches that revealed Emily's character, the neatly stacked dishes, the carefully arranged supplies, the books marked with sticky notes, and highlighted passages. "You have created an incredible rhythm here," he said softly, his voice carrying a mix of surprise and admiration. Emily looked up, her expression calm yet alert, and replied, "It is not just rhythm, it is routine, consistency, and sometimes improvisation when things do not go as planned." Her words reflected the countless hours spent making choices that often went unnoticed, the silent acts that kept her child safe, nourished, and loved. Richard took a careful step forward, his attention drawn to the way Emily navigated her world, observing the delicate balance between practical necessity and emotional care. He saw the precision in every gesture, the thoughtfulness in every arrangement, and the resilience that allowed her to maintain this delicate equilibrium day after day. Emily placed Lily gently into the crib, adjusting the blanket once more, and then moved to the small counter to tidy up the remnants of the simple meals she had prepared. Each movement was deliberate, unhurried, a quiet assertion of control in a life often constrained by circumstance. The city lights outside began to flicker more brightly as night approached, and the distant hum of traffic seemed to recede, leaving a private, contemplative space between them. Richard watched the scene, realizing that what he had initially perceived as ordinary was, in fact, extraordinary, a life managed with intelligence, patience, and unwavering commitment, a testament to resilience and capability in the face of adversity. Emily returned to the armchair, sitting down with Lily on her lap, and hummed a gentle lullaby that filled the room with warmth, a melody that spoke of care, stability, and love. Richard could not help but feel the gravity of her quiet strength, the subtle power in her ability to maintain dignity and composure amidst challenges that might have overwhelmed others. He stepped closer, his voice softer now, infused with genuine recognition. "I have underestimated the depth of your strength," he said, and Emily lifted her gaze, meeting his eyes with a calm acknowledgement, a subtle exchange that carried mutual understanding. In that moment, the apartment seemed to transform into a space where effort, intelligence, and compassion converged, where the invisible labor of daily life revealed its profound significance. The night deepened, and the lights outside shimmered against the darkened streets, but within the apartment, a quiet sense of accomplishment and recognition pervaded the air. Emily traced a gentle line along Lily's back, her movements instinctive and tender, and Richard observed, taking in the simple yet powerful truth of what he had witnessed, that resilience, care, and thoughtful action could create a world of dignity and possibility even within the confines of modest circumstances. The room remained filled with this unspoken acknowledgement, a shared understanding that transcended words, a bridge formed between two very different lives, connected through the recognition of determination, humanity, and the quiet, enduring triumphs of everyday existence. Emily sat on the armchair, Lily resting peacefully in her lap, her small chest rising and falling with the rhythm of a contented sleep. The apartment was quiet, the hum of the refrigerator and the faint sound of distant traffic outside creating a gentle background that seemed to cocoon them in a private world of calm. Richard leaned against the doorway, his hands in his pockets, absorbing the quiet strength that radiated from Emily with each deliberate movement she made. He noticed the way she shifted her weight slightly to adjust her daughter without disturbing her, the careful placement of the blanket to ensure comfort, and the subtle, intentional order of the room that spoke volumes about her discipline and attentiveness. "I have watched many people accomplish impressive things," he said, his voice soft and measured, "but few with this level of grace under pressure." Emily looked up, her blue eyes meeting his, and offered a small, reflective smile. "Grace is not always visible," she said quietly. "Sometimes it is simply perseverance in the face of what seems impossible." Richard nodded, taking a step closer, recognizing the depth of her statement. He could see now that the acts she performed daily, feeding, studying, planning, and nurturing, were far more remarkable than any single achievement he had encountered in his own structured, privileged life. The evening light filtered through the curtains, painting gentle stripes across the walls, and Emily placed her notebook on the small table, closing it with a quiet click that marked the end of another day's careful planning. She rose to her feet and moved to the kitchen counter, washing the small dishes from her earlier meal with methodical care, each motion deliberate, a reflection of the care and attention she poured into every aspect of her life. Richard observed her quietly, noting the patience and focus that guided her hands, the way she maintained composure despite the constant demands of her dual roles as mother and student. He realized that her resilience was not born from circumstance alone, but from a conscious choice to rise to every challenge, to meet every need with intelligence and calm determination. Emily returned to the armchair and gently repositioned Lily, smoothing the blanket around her and tracing the small, delicate contours of her daughter's face with a careful hand. Richard felt a quiet awe, a recognition that the strength he witnessed was extraordinary precisely because it was unassuming, quiet, and consistent. He understood that Emily had cultivated a life defined by responsibility, empathy, and ingenuity, a life that transformed limitations into opportunities and hardships into lessons of endurance. The apartment seemed to exude a sense of resilience, the space itself a reflection of her discipline and love, each object and arrangement a testament to thoughtful planning and care. Richard spoke again, his voice softer now, almost reverent. "You have turned every challenge into an opportunity to show strength and dedication." Emily inclined her head, acknowledging his words with a subtle nod, a gesture that carried humility and quiet confidence. Outside, the city lights shimmered against the darkening streets, reflecting off windows and puddles from an earlier rain, but within the apartment, a warm, steady sense of achievement filled the space. Emily smiled faintly at Richard, then looked down at Lily, who stirred slightly and reached for her finger, and in that simple interaction, the essence of Emily's life was revealed: tireless care, deliberate action, and unwavering commitment. Richard's perspective shifted in that moment, a deep respect taking root as he realized that true strength often resided in consistency, attention to detail, and the courage to face each day with steadfast resolve. He took a quiet breath, allowing the significance of what he had observed to settle, knowing that the extraordinary often existed in the ordinary, and that Emily's life, though unassuming on the surface, carried lessons of resilience, dignity, and profound humanity that could not be overlooked or underestimated. The soft night had fully settled over the city, and the apartment glowed under the gentle light of the single lamp, casting long, warm shadows across the walls. Emily sat on the armchair, Lily now fast asleep in her crib, the small rise and fall of her chest a rhythmic reminder of the fragile life she had nurtured. The room was filled with the quiet hum of everyday life, the refrigerator's soft whir, the occasional distant siren, the muted footsteps of neighbors above. Richard stood near the window, looking out at the city lights, the reflections dancing on the glass, his mind replaying the moments he had observed tonight. He turned to watch Emily, noting the calm strength in her posture, the small gestures that spoke of care and attentiveness, the subtle organization that revealed a mind balancing responsibility, love, and ambition. "You have built something remarkable here," he said quietly, his voice breaking the silence without intruding. Emily looked up, eyes meeting his with a mixture of quiet acknowledgement and calm resolve. "It is not remarkable in the way people think," she said softly, "but it is enough for her, and that is all that matters." Richard nodded, understanding the weight behind her words. The realization settled over him that true achievement was not always measured in wealth, accolades, or public recognition, but often in the quiet persistence to meet every need with intelligence, patience, and unwavering attention. He moved closer, his gaze taking in the small details. The well-worn chair that held her through long nights of study and care, the carefully arranged books and notes that reflected her constant striving for knowledge and improvement, the tiny touches of tenderness scattered throughout the room. Emily rose from her chair, crossing to the kitchen to put away a few items, each motion deliberate, precise, and unhurried. Richard could see that every act, no matter how small, carried intention and meaning, a testament to her ability to create stability and comfort amid challenging circumstances. She returned to the armchair, smoothing the blanket over Lily with gentle care, and Richard realized that the simplest gestures contained the deepest strength. Outside, the city continued its ceaseless rhythm, but inside, the apartment held a sense of accomplishment and recognition that transcended the ordinary. Emily spoke softly to herself, a habit that Richard had come to notice. Every choice matters. Every effort counts. He recognized that her life, though modest in appearance, was structured around deliberate action and love, a balance of practical necessity and unshakable resolve. Richard took a measured step forward, offering words that carried both respect and admiration. "You have shown me that strength is often quiet, invisible, yet unyielding." Emily nodded slightly, a faint, reflective smile crossing her lips, and in that moment, the unspoken understanding between them crystallized: recognition of resilience, acknowledgement of effort, and appreciation for a life navigated with dignity. The apartment, simple and modest, felt like a sanctuary of perseverance and quiet triumph. Richard realized that witnessing Emily's life had altered his perspective, showing him that true power and impact often resided in consistency, attention to detail, and the courage to face each day with unwavering commitment. Emily glanced at Lily one last time, ensuring her comfort, and Richard could see in her eyes the balance of hope, care, and determination that defined every moment of her life. In that shared silence, filled with mutual recognition, the apartment seemed to radiate a profound sense of accomplishment, a quiet celebration of endurance, and the remarkable strength found in the ordinary. Morning light spilled softly through the curtains, painting the small apartment in a gentle golden hue that made the modest furnishings glow with warmth. Emily stood by the crib, brushing a lock of hair from Lily's face as the baby stirred awake, tiny eyes blinking sleepily toward the soft light. The previous night's quiet had left a sense of calm and accomplishment lingering in the room, an almost tangible recognition of resilience and care. Richard remained near the doorway, his posture relaxed but attentive, a sense of admiration quietly settling over him as he watched Emily move with purpose, each action deliberate yet effortless in its grace. "You continue to amaze me," he said quietly, careful not to disturb the fragile serenity of the morning. Emily turned slightly, offering a soft smile. "It is not about amazement," she replied, her voice calm and steady. "It is about commitment, and every choice I make is for her well-being." Richard nodded, absorbing the depth of her words, realizing that what he had witnessed over the past hours was far more than ordinary resilience. It was a demonstration of intelligence, patience, and quiet courage that transformed limitations into a life of dignity and possibility. Emily lifted Lily into her arms, cradling her with a practiced tenderness that spoke of countless nights and early mornings, of decisions made under pressure, of a love that required both wisdom and endurance. She moved toward the small table, setting the baby down safely, and began preparing a modest breakfast, each movement precise, reflecting the careful balance she maintained between practicality and care. Richard watched the subtle details. The way she measured ingredients with attention, the way she organized the small space efficiently, the gentle hum she maintained as a rhythm for both herself and Lily. It was clear to him that every act was intentional, a deliberate weaving of love, responsibility, and foresight into the fabric of daily life. Outside, the city was waking, the sounds of traffic and distant chatter filtering faintly into the apartment, but inside, a quiet focus dominated, a sanctuary built from years of thoughtful effort and unwavering resolve. Emily set the breakfast before Lily, guiding her daughter's hands gently as she explored the food, and Richard noted the quiet skill with which Emily nurtured independence while providing guidance, teaching resilience in the smallest ways. He felt a profound respect for the way she managed challenges, and understanding that true strength often resided in the ordinary moments of care and attention, and that these moments built the foundation for extraordinary outcomes. Emily looked up at Richard, meeting his gaze with the calm assurance that had defined her throughout their time together. "It is not recognition I seek," she said softly. "Only the knowledge that she is cared for, that every small effort contributes to her future." Richard took a deep breath, recognizing the lesson she embodied, that the most meaningful victories are often quiet, unheralded, yet immeasurably powerful. He stepped forward, offering a hand not just in support but in acknowledgement of her consistent courage and integrity. Emily accepted the gesture with a small nod, the unspoken understanding between them carrying more weight than any words could convey. Together, they watched Lily explore her breakfast, the morning light illuminating a sense of possibility and hope, a reminder that dignity, perseverance, and quiet strength could shape a life, transform circumstance, and inspire recognition and respect from those who truly saw the effort behind the ordinary. In that shared morning, the apartment seemed to hold not only the traces of hardship and responsibility but also the promise of future growth, the enduring power of steadfast love, and the recognition that every choice, every small act of care, could create a lasting impact far beyond what anyone could immediately perceive.